Good morning. I'm going to talk about the Mauthausen concentration camp. So, its origins. After the Nazi Germany achieved Anschluss in March 1938, the SS chief Heinrich Himmler and other SS leaders inspected this bank next to the Danube River, 3 miles away from the town of Mauthausen, because they wanted to build a concentration camp there. In August of the same year, the first 300 political opponents and groups of people described by the Nazis as traitors to the people from all over Austria were transferred from the Dachau concentration camp to Mauthausen in order to work in the construction of the new concentration camp. The terrain chosen was very close to the Weiner Graben stone quarry, meaning that prisoners also had to work in the granite quarries. And the members of the SS were transported with the first prisoners.
You've muted yourself, Elena.
No, sorry.
Yeah, there you go.
Once the camp was built, the commandant was at the head, and all the camp personnel was subordinated to him. This first photograph here shows, I think it's this one, Heinrich Himmler leading an inspection of the camp in April 1941. And here is in Mauthausen, all the SS soldiers or officials swearing. The prisoners. After the start of World War II, the number of prisoners dramatically increased. There's an estimate of 190,000 prisoners that passed through the concentration camp from its opening to its closure in May 1945, and approximately 90,000 died. The SS categorized the prisoners according to the reason why they had been sent to the camp, so they had to wear triangles of different colors in their uniforms, and this categorization also determined the chances of survival of each group. The Jews obviously had the least chances of survival, more than 40,000 died, and criminals normally had more chances of survival and could even acquire posts as prisoner functionaries. Then I put a special mention to the Spanish prisoners because thousands of Spanish refugees who had fought against Franco in the Spanish Civil War and that had fled to France were sent to Mauthausen when France fell in June 1940. The communist members of the international brigades were also sent to Mauthausen, and in the concentration camp, the majority of Spanish worked in the quarries under slave labor conditions, and some fortunate individuals were given administrative jobs. So one of these fortunate individuals was the Photographer of Mauthausen that you may know about because it's a Spanish movie that in which appears Mario Casas, a very famous actor, and it talks about Francisco Boix Campo, this man over here, that arrived at Mauthausen in January 1941, and he first worked in the camp as a translator because he was able to speak German, but then he had also very good photography skills, so they sent him to work to the camp's photo laboratory. He risked his life by disobeying the orders to destroy once the liberation of the camp occurred. He disobeyed the orders of destroying every photographic evidence of life in the camp, and he rescued thousands of negatives that show the atrocities committed by the Nazis. He was able to do all this thing because he had the help of Anna Pointer, that was a local woman that had already helped the prisoners of the camp by throwing them food over the fences. So in the fall of 1944, some prisoners that were working secretly with Francisco were sent out of the camp to work at the quarries and were able to pass the photographs, the negatives, to Anna Pointer. And also at the Nuremberg trials, that were the 13 trials after World War II, that with the purpose of bringing Nazi wars crimes to justice. In there, Francisco gave evidence that he had hidden 20,000 negatives. That was a third of the photographic archive of the camp. This is the categorization system that I talked about earlier. Here, politics, criminals, immigrants, Bible readers, homosexuals, and asocials. This is the color for each one. Here it puts a badge for recidivists. That is what they had to carry in their uniforms. These are prisoners from the penal system, Jews that they had to wear a special badge. Here it puts special badges also, and Jude, Poe, and here it puts that suspected from escaping. They had to wear this one also if they were suspected from escaping. Women prisoners, for a long time there were no women prisoners at Mauthausen. In 1942, Heinrich Himmler ordered brothels to be set in several concentration camps to which key workers would be able to visit them. The SS recruited female prisoners of other female concentration camps, such as Ravensbrück, and sent them to work as forced sex workers to Mauthausen. In September 1944, the Mauthausen women's concentration camp was finally established, and around 3,000 women were officially registered in this concentration camp. This is a photo just after the liberation of the camp, of the women's section of the camp. And this is the story about one of the women that were there. That is this one here. That is Kenya Ring, that was born to a Jewish family in the town of Kieserpice in Poland. And after the German invasion of Poland, German soldiers broke into her town, into her house, and sent her and her family to a ghetto. She was then deported to Mauthausen, where she would try to escape while she was working. And she tried to escape into the woods, but she was found by the SS guards and brutally beaten. She heard one of the soldiers that was beating her say, "Don't waste a bullet on her, she is dying." But she wasn't dying, and shortly afterwards she was deported to Belsen-Bergen camp, and then she was liberated when British forces entered on 1945, and then she immigrated to the United States in the 47. So what did Mauthausen look like? I put this to photograph because it's nearly the same photograph from the same angle, but obviously that's when it was operated, and this is nowadays. This is the main and only entrance to Mauthausen. It has stayed nearly the same. Well, let's see, this has disappeared. And yeah. And then also here I put the same kind of thing because it's the same corridor. Here should be the entrance, and this is what you first see when you enter. This from in the side are the barracks of the prisoners, and here's the kitchen and the doorsteps. And this is the same photograph, but nowadays. And the map of the concentration camp that was formed by 3 main camps. That here, number 1, that was the main original detention camp. And here, the prisoners were forced to work. And camp number 3 was made later on for the influx of Hungarian Jews. Then here you have the Russian camp, that was the hospital wing. They left them there to die, the very sick people. The quarry, that I will talk later about it. The SS barracks, and the SS facilities that they even had a swimming pool and a pitch to play football, or I don't know what they did. And this, I also included a map of all the concentration camps with their sub-camps of Austria. Mauthausen is here. Okay, so then what happened at Mauthausen? There was a section of prisoners at the camp that were called the K prisoners, that were Soviet officers who had been captured as prisoners of war and had tried to escape. So they were sent to Mauthausen in order to immediately kill them. Some were immediately killed, but other ones were left to die in Block 20. That was this section of the concentration camp only for Soviet K prisoners. On the night of the 1st to the 2nd of February of 1945, around 500 K prisoners in Block 20 undertook a breakout. They attacked the watchtowers and threw wet blankets to the electric fences, so they were able to climb them. Some collapsed and died due to their horrible physical conditions. but 419 people managed to escape. However, the SS initiated a manhunt, and almost all the K prisoners that had managed to escape were captured again and immediately killed. This whole shot and murder operation was called the Mühlviertel Hunt, and only 11 people survived. So here, I just want to put a little bit of this video, like 1 minute, because it talks about here the Mikhail Lvovic, that was one of the K prisoners that survived. And here is like a mini biography. The Gestapo arrested him and sent him to Mauthausen as a K prisoner. He survived the Hare Hunt, hiding in a place provided by the Landgather family in Switzerland. Because the 11 people that survived was thanks for the local people providing them shelter. So then the forced labor in the quarries that when I showed the map, at the left-hand side was the quarries. So as I said on my first slides, the choice of Mauthausen for being the new site of the concentration camp was closely connected to the granite quarries that were there. The working hours of the prisoners lasted at least 11 hours in summer and 9 in winter. Their work consisted on breaking the stone from the cliff by hand or using explosive, and then transporting them out of the quarry on wooden frames that they carry on their backs. The granite blocks could weigh up to 50 kilograms, and the march up the long quarry steps that were called the stairs of death, that are these ones here, was accompanied by beatings from the guards. A prisoner had to climb these stairs minimum 10 times a day. If Jews, especially Jews, if they failed or were unable to continue working, they were pushed over the edge of the cliff by SS guards, and the guards then would say that the prisoner committed suicide by jumping. This is an Austrian gypsy remembering his days working at the quarry, and I highlighted the most important bits where he says, "Here I worked at the quarry. If anyone did not keep up with the work, he had to undress and lie down. We had to carry heavy stones with them on our backs. We had to climb 180 steps. The SS beat us." And then he says, "As a result, there was often some pushing. Everybody wanted to escape the blows. If anyone fell, he was finished off by a bullet in the back of his neck." And finally, the liberation of the camp, that here are some images and videos that I'm going to put while I explain it. So as Allied and Soviet troops advanced into Germany, the SS began to destroy the traces of its crimes. The Mauthausen gas chamber remained operative until the very last days of war, and the SS murdered 3,000 prisoners a few days before the liberation of the camp. The 3rd of May of 1945, the last SS guards left Mauthausen, and the next day, Americans finally entered the camp and first liberated around 40,000 prisoners. They found the bodies of hundreds that had died during the days before the liberation, and they buried their corpses were buried in the camp cemeteries next to the concentration camp that are still there today. Many of the liberated prisoners were so weak that they died within months of the liberation, and with the US troops that entered Mauthausen, also entered a war crime investigative team with the purpose of collecting evidence of the Nazi war crimes.